Hey students, we are on lesson 5-2. We are on page 185, so get your workbook and a pencil if you don't have it out already. And our lesson today is estimate quotients with 2-digit dividers. Here's our learning goal. You can read it with me. I can estimate quotients. Here is our solve and share. I'm going to read through it, let you try on your own, and then we'll solve through it together. Kyle's school needs to buy posters for a fundraiser. The school has a budget of $147. Each poster costs about $13. So here's their budget. The posters are, so I need to split that up to see. However, it says about how many posters can a school buy. So that means that I'm going to be estimating. I'm going to be rounding these numbers to try to find compatible numbers that are near each other in order to solve it. Go ahead and pause the video here, give it a try, and then we'll work through it together. Alrighty, so what I like to do is look at my dividend right here. So our dividend divided by the divisor, here's our vocab, equals the quotient. So I like to look at the first two numbers of my dividend and see if it's anywhere near what numbers I have here. Maybe I need to double my divisor over here. Maybe it's really close to a number. So, well, 14, that's really close to 13. So I could round that to about 130, divide it by 13, and get 10. Because 13 would go into that 13 one time, and we've got that 0 left over. And if you think 13 times 10, well, that's 13. However, with estimation, it's not cookie cutter. It's not going to be the same for every single student, for every single problem. So you might have looked at this and said, well, that's really close to 150, which ends in a 0. It's got a 5 in it. Those are typically numbers we can work with pretty easily. Now, I would want to divide that. What's 13 close to? That the first two digits are? Well, 15. So if I do 150 divided by 15, I'd still get that 10. And so my estimation here, about 10 posters. Next, you could have also done, maybe you would keep that 150 but rounded that 13 down to 10. And so that's just going to give us 15, about 15 posters. So there's somewhere between 10 and 15 posters. Okay, let's go ahead and talk through our visual learning bridge. Alrighty. So how can you use compatible numbers to estimate quotients? Ella earned $159 by selling bracelets. Each bracelet was the same price. About how much did each bracelet cost? We've got that about in there. That is a signal word for you to know, hey, I'm going to estimate. So this little guy is telling us you can use division to find the price. You know the total amount earned and the number of bracelets. We have $159 for 75 bracelets. So the question asks about how much. So an estimate is enough. Use compatible numbers to estimate 159 divided by 75. So I think 179 is close to 160. So they're rounding that guy to 160. Is there a number close to 75 that divides into 160 evenly? So looking at really, if you look at this first number 7, well, 7 doesn't go into 16 evenly. So I'm looking at kind of those first numbers to piece this apart in my mind. But 8 would go into that. So 75, that's really close to 80, and then I can simplify it down. So what you have here is 160 over 80. And if you remember fractions last year, when we've got that extra 0 on there, we can create an equivalent fraction by dividing by 10. And so if I divide the top by 10, I get 16. If I divide the bottom by 10, I get 8. So what you can do shorthand here is crisscross out those zeros to be done with them. And what we're really doing is 16 divided by 8 because we've got those equivalent fractions that we're working with. So if I do 16 divided by 8, I get 2. And so that means my 160 divided by 80 is also 2. It would be the same answer there. Okay, you can always use multiplication to check. So you can do 80 times 2 and you'll get that 160. So Ella charged about $2 for each bracelet. Okay, we've got some problems to estimate. I'm going to zoom you in a little bit on the desk. Swoop. Okay. Number 2 says 287 divided by 42. So what I want to do, kind of like the Miss Collins trick. I don't know that everybody does this, but it works well for me. I like to look at my first two numbers over here, kind of look at what's going on over here, and ask myself, okay, will 4 go into 28? Well, yeah, it will. It'll go in evenly. So I might keep this 280, just drop that 7 off, divided by, drop my 2 off, 40. So 42 rounded down to 40. And 287, normally that would round up to 29, right? But because we're using compatible numbers, I rounded it down. So then remember, this is like 280 over 40, which if I'm going to create an equivalent fraction, I can divide the top and the bottom by 10. And so that would be like 28 over 4. And so to do this real shorthand, if you got a 0 in this one, you can cross out the 0 in that one. If you don't have a 0 in both, you cannot do that. Do not just be dropping zeros. All right, so now what I'm really doing here is 28 divided by 4, because that's an equivalent division problem. And so what we have here, if I think, okay, well, 28 divided by 4 is, why can't I think? 8, right? No, 7, Practice your facts, kids. So we are going to get 7 for our estimated answer there. And if I'm looking at what the book says 7. Okay, and again, these can be a little bit different. So just because I estimated this way, you might have done it a little bit differently. Maybe you did, you could have just done it a little bit differently and gotten an answer tiny bit different, and that's okay. All right, let's go ahead and try another one. We have, let's do 320 divided by 11. Well, if I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at my first two numbers, is there a number that 11 will go into that's really close to 32? Well, we know 11 times anything is a double number when we're in, times 2, 22 times 3, 33. So I could round this to 330 divided by 11, and that would give me, 11 goes into 33 3 times, and we've got a 0 we got to add back in, so we get 30. You could multiply 30 times 11 to double check that. And the answer in our book was 30. You could have also maybe just done like 300 divided by 11 or divided by 10. And so you could do your zeros trick, and then 30 divided by 1 is 30. You're going to get that same answer, even though we rounded a little bit differently. Okay, so for this one, we get 30. Let's try one more, and then I'll give you one to try on your own. Let's do 208 divided by 72. Well, if I'm looking at my divisor right here, 72, I'm probably going to round that down to 70. And so sometimes I find it's easier to wiggle your second number or your divisor to see what would be compatible with your dividend. So over here, I want a number that 7 can go into in my first two digits. So if I think 7, 14, 21, that's pretty close to the 20 we've got there. So if I round this to 210, which is pretty close, 7, I've got my zeros here. So again, this is like 210 divided by 70. This would be the fraction of that division problem, because fractions are really division. And so if I want to divide the top by 10 and the bottom by 10 to make an equivalent fraction, I would have 21 over 7. Shorthand way to do that, crisscross out your zeros. Boop, boop. 21 divided by 7, well, that's 3. So for this one, our answer is 3. That's what we got in the book. Okay, I want you to go ahead and give number 5 a try. I would put your 62 down to 60 and take a peek at our 55 right there. What could you round that first part of it and zero out in the ones place? So you have a 0 in the ones place. What could that 55 go to? That 6 would go into easily. And we will talk about number 5 in group.